Welcome back, dear listeners, to another enlightening episode of Serenity Speaks Conversations on Wellness. I'm Cleo, your guide, and today we continue our captivating conversation with Mark Peters, the Tai Chi and Qi Gong expert from Painting the Rainbow in Birmingham. In this episode, Mark delves deeper into the transformative power of Tai Chi, explaining how it helps retrain and recalibrate our bodies for optimum health.
It retrains your calibration. That when you put your foot on the floor, it touches the floor, so it tells you in your body. What you don't know is whether you're leaning or not, because you haven't calibrated that. So if you're doing work with the physiotherapy, occupational therapists, they'll work on your alignment and your balance and your position, your hips and position, so that you retrain it. That's what Tai Chi is, that three-dimensional retraining, like yoga. People come along and they stand on one leg and lean over. How can they do that? Positioning. And when you retune it, then it works in the rest of your life. And that's what happens with Tai Chi. So as a health exercise, you recalibrate your body to be in balance. As a martial exercise, you put somebody else's body out of balance, so they fall over. It's just tuning. I'll give you an example. Some years ago now, a guy came to the class and he got peripheral neuropathy, which is no sense of nerves in the feet. So people with diabetes or because they've had a brain injury or some kind of accident, so they've got nerve damage, which means sometimes they can burn their hands or burn things easily because they've got. If they got it on the feet, when they touch the floor, they don't get feedback through the feet, so they're not sure, and then they can fall a lot. They have poor balance because of this lack of sensation from the ground. And so he came because his physio sent him an acupuncturist, and the acupuncturist said for his pain, the acupuncturist said, "Oh, what would help your balance is Tai Chi." So he came to the class, and I asked him how it was affecting him, and he said, "Well, when I walk, sometimes I don't know, there's a height change in the ground, and I'll step and I'll fall. And so I just, because I've got no sensation in the bottom of my feet, I don't know whether I'm on the ground or not." I thought, okay, it's interesting. Both as an engineer and as a Tai Chi teacher, I said, okay, just for my interest, how do you know that you're not floating off the floor? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, how do you know? He said, I never really thought about that. Obviously, I'm not floating, am I? I said, no, you're obviously not. How do you know you're not? Tell me in your body, what's the lowest place that you feel a connection to the ground? And for him, it wasn't his feet, it was in his calf. You could feel the muscles in his calf and the lower leg. I said, okay, if we calibrate your body movement so you can feel the changes in those muscles, then you'll start to know where the ground is. He said, I didn't know I could do that. I said, yes, because we're all moving around in space. But when you feel where the connection is, like I know if I touch the screen, I can feel it through my finger. If I touch the table, I can feel it through my finger. How would I know I'm doing it? Where do I feel it next? So we through the Tai Chi movements, we got him to sense through his body where he's feeling. And then he said he's just falling, stopped falling. And he actually got his driving license back. I couldn't drive, sounds deaf, but I couldn't sense the pedals. I couldn't sense the pedals. I couldn't sense them in the way I thought I should. But once I was retrained, I could feel it in my leg muscles. And that's a lot of the time, if people come to brain injuries unit and they're trying to balance or their sense of where they are because they've lost through a stroke or through an accident, they've lost the connection in their body and they've got to retrain it. That's what we do a lot with the hospitals around Tai Chi for that reason. If we keep retraining ourselves, all we're doing is honing in martial arts terms, you call it sharpening the sword, but it's a term we use for honing your skills. So if you are constantly practicing your yoga or Tai Chi and you're refining that feedback through your body where you are in space, where your balance is, then in fact one of the tests for balance is closing your eyes. How long can you stand on one leg with your eyes closed? And then you think, okay, well, if I don't need that sense to orientate myself, if I'll use it through my sensory awareness of my body and the connection to the space around me, then everybody knows that calibration. It just all Tai Chi puts it back in again. A particular style of Qigong called Fa Sung Gong is a Qigong system, but the Chinese government didn't like it because they felt it was giving people independent thought, and also a lot of Tai Chi that you see from mainland China is government controlled Tai Chi. And so like 24-step and various other forms are all organized by the government, and the government talk about the Belt and Road initiative to build the world together. There's massive stuff about what China is trying to control. Every nation in the world at some time or other is trying to control the world at some time or other. And China are doing their stint through the Belt and Road project. And so Fa Sun Gong is one of the Qigong systems that the government banned. And they banned another one as well. What's it called? Shanggong, which means fragrant Buddha Qigong. Now, they only banned them because people were enjoying them. The government had no control over them, and they didn't like that. That's why at the moment there's something called Health Qigong, which isn't particular, but they've trademarked it, and they're trying to government control a few sets of Qigong. There are thousands of sets of Qigong. Everyone practices freely worldwide, and Qigong literally means breath exercise or energy exercise. Qi your breath, and Gong exercise. And so most Qigong sets, the modern sets, I would say anything that's probably done 1920s onwards would classify as more modern. Would more often classify into an aerobic Qigong set. And so it doesn't mean you have to wear lycra, but it does mean that it's more repetitive and more natural breathing. So you don't have any reverse breathing patterns or specific breathing patterns, just natural breathing and repetitive movements. So it looks very similar in structure to what you might call an aerobic class. That makes it much more accessible, because Tai Chi itself, like yoga, when people first do it, loads of different poses, people can't remember what they're doing, they have to commit to training. And Tai Chi is the same. But Qigong, if you go along, you could just join in with no expectation of having to learn. It's very accessible. You repeat the movements, which means you can get into the rhythm with what's going on. It's kind of a gateway into more deeper studies of Tai Chi and Qigong. But realistically, Qigong is far more accessible. And what the time we're teaching in the parks is because it's more accessible. When we come into hospitals, we tend to teach Qigong first because it's more accessible, and then move long-term groups onto Tai Chi because it has more health and structural benefits. More broadly, Qigong, in fact, the phrase is all Tai Chi is Qigong, but not all Qigong is Tai Chi. And what I mean by that is all Tai Chi is breath exercise as well. So it would classify as Qigong, but it's much more in depth in terms of physical movement and other things. Whereas Qigong is not Tai Chi because its patterns of movement is different.
Right.
Qigong is more accessible. Often people would think of Qigong as a mindfulness exercise, as a more meditative and breath-based exercise. People often think Qigong gets them connected more spiritually, just because it's much more accessible. But Tai Chi is like, if you were at school and you could do an O level and A level, you might go, oh, my Qigong is an O level. Well, if I want to do Tai Chi, then I might do a master's or my MBA or a doctorate. So it's just a higher level. I started calling Tai Chi a Qigong a kind of gateway way of getting into Tai Chi, because you have to put the effort in, and with Qigong people tend to stick with it more initially, and when they're hooked, then they'll start involving themselves more in the whole arts. If they start with Tai Chi, unless they've come from a martial art background, they find it hard to get into it, so they quit. In fact, at Moseley Hospital, the first time years ago, it was a consultant, Jed Rowe. He's been there quite a long time. But when I first spoke to him about doing that, he said, "No, we tried Tai Chi in the past, but it doesn't work." And I said, "Well, we had somebody come along and did classes with people, and they didn't like it." I said, "No, because what they were teaching is a traditional system of Tai Chi, where you want to learn it, whereas patients just want to be well." And so I said, "I'll come and do it, and I'll show you." So I started introducing them to Qigong. The patients wanted more of it. We ended up doing more classes. That's why we train people at Moseley Hospital. And then once patients were really enjoying it and they were staying more long term, we then started introducing Tai Chi, because by then they wanted it.
Of course, yeah.
It was too hard. So this is this is why it gets used such a lot in those different areas, because it's more accessible.
Someone sitting at home, they don't do much exercise, and they're thinking of ways to start, just do something on a daily basis. Would you say Qi Gong is it something you could do, for instance, like could you find a YouTube video and start doing that? Or would you say it's supposed to come to a class or find somebody who's,
Well, ideally find a class, but certainly Qigong, you could learn Qigong more easily off a YouTube video than you could Tai Chi. Because Tai Chi is a lot more three-dimensional movement, you need a lot more space, depth of field. It's hard to get off a screen. Tends to be much more two-dimensional. It's much easier to get off a screen. So if you went to my YouTube channel, type in Tai Chi.
I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes.
And there's loads of free videos on there that people can join in. Some of them
Brilliant.
are filmed in the park. Some of them are filmed in the back garden, which we did in lockdown. Some of them are clips from videos, but there's lots of free stuff people can do. Some seated, some standing, some that involve more stretching, some more gentle. There's lots of free stuff on there.
Brilliant.
You can certainly do some Qigong at home, 10 minutes a day, and then build up from there quite
Just
easily.
get started, yeah. Because often it's the getting started, and if you're, a bit nervous about going to a class, that's a good way to get started as well. You mentioned just quickly as well about being seated. So could you do like a half an hour session or 45-minute session of Qigong seated?
Qigong, you can do seated Tai Chi. I'll put videos on my YouTube channel.
I'll direct them.
We've had people, they can't stand because of age or some other medical condition. We've had people who are in wheelchairs, so they can't stand but they can still take part. And so there's videos of that on YouTube. And we often work with cardiac patients that have got, say, cardiac failure and they can't stand for very long. And so that's seated. And I think the easiest way to think of cardiac failure is almost like the Duracell bunny and the batteries run out so much, and the batteries run out quite quick. So it's better to sit and use it better and perfectly. But yeah, you can do it seated, you can do it standing. As far as I can tell, there's only one real reason why you can't do Tai Chi or Qigong, and that's because you find it boring. That's it.
Yeah, that's
No
the only.
medical reason. Yeah, no medical reason, no other reason at all. In the
Yeah.
rainbow, you have a team of people and they go to different venues and different centres, the different hospitals, Parkinson's Society, Alzheimer's Society. Yeah, so we'll tell people all about that and where the classes are. And every year I run a training course. In fact, I've got the only medically accredited training course, and the website for that is midlandstaichirehab.com. And I tend to train physios and OTs, other people too, but it really has to use Tai Chi and Qigong in a rehabilitation setting so that people can become more able. Yeah. Energy flows naturally through us, and any tensions, like putting a kink in a pipe, it stops the energy flowing. So if your body flows naturally, energy flows naturally around you. And after that, with the people who believe in Qi or they're clearing things, I put that down to personal people's choices and beliefs. Same as with yoga. Some people do it more physically, some people do it more spiritually. I just want to make it accessible so people can go where they want with that. Easiest way to describe it is energy flows naturally around you, like your circulation, like your breath. If you relax and align correctly, energy flows naturally and freely. If you have tensions or misalignments because you're slouching or whatever it might be, then we get blockages. And we could say that could be your circulation, your blood, that could be your Qi, that could be your air, your breath.
It's all the same, really.
Stand correctly, move correctly, breathe properly, all good.
I like that. Oh, that's brilliant. As we draw to a close on another enlightening episode of Serenity Speaks, Conversations on Wellness, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Mark Peters for sharing his wisdom and expertise with us once again. Remember, the journey towards holistic well-being is an ongoing practice, and Tai Chi and Qi Gong offering valuable tools to guide us along that path. Join us next time for more insightful conversations and inspiration on Serenity Speaks. Until then, may you find harmony and serenity in every step of your journey. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and give us some feedback.